important subject, and that is, of course, we've got the new year that's coming up soon. And as we think about the new year, of course, one of the things that comes to mind is New Year's resolutions and all the ones that we've made in the past and broken year after year. So I'm not going to talk about that. That's a waste of time. I'll let you do that if you want to. But what I do want to talk about is something related, and that is, I want to ask you a question. When was the last time that you did something new? Something out of your comfort zone? Something either dangerous, scary, or exciting. Something that you had never done before. We have some friends who are missionaries in Tanzania, where we were for many years. And there's a group of people there. It's a group called the Maasai. How many of you ever heard of the Maasai? Okay, if you ever watched National Geographic, these are the people who have the red capes on. They usually have something in their hands, maybe a bow and arrow or a staff. Their hair is slicked back with red mud. And they're cow herders, and they live the same way today that that tribe has lived for the last 1,000 years. So they are very, very, how shall we say it, traditional. And so our friends working with these Maasai asked them, what is it you need and want more than anything else? And they said, well, we really need an elementary school for our children. And so they wanted one, but there was no money for it. So our missionary friends had the wonderful idea of bringing a choir of 10 Maasai to the United States to sing in churches and to raise some money for the school. And so they did that, and it was a very interesting thing because here is 1,000 years ago of how they lived, meeting modern culture and modern technology and things like we've never been on a toilet before. Where do you flush it? Do you stand on the rim or do you sit? And many, many different things like that. But one of the things that happened was that the daughter of the missionaries, her name was Nadine, decided to take them to an amusement park like Cedar Point. And so they went there and she showed them around and they did some of the things and so on. But they kept looking at the largest, biggest roller coaster with curiosity and desire. And they said to Nadine, we want to go on the roller coaster. And Nadine said to them, no, you don't. And they said, yes, we really want to go on the roller coaster. And Nadine said, it is terrifying. It is scary. We have never experienced anything like it. And they said, we are Maasai. We kill lions. We are not afraid of anything. We will go on the roller coaster. And so Nadine says, okay, that's fine. You can go on the roller coaster. So they all, 10 of them, including parents and children and teens, all got on the roller coaster. And they went on the roller coaster. I wish you could have been there to see this, because when they got off of the roller coaster, they were as white as I am. It was the most terrifying thing that they had ever experienced, and they had nothing to compare it to. And they all got off and dropped to the ground and began kissing and hugging the ground, if you can do that. And so there they are, and it just so happened then when they were back in Tanzania that they even heard them telling their friends about it. Now remember, these are friends who've never seen, experienced anything like it, so they're trying to explain to their friends what a roller coaster is and what it's like to be on it. And so finally one of them says, well, you know when we go hunting for birds? Yeah. And we have our bow and arrow? Yeah. And then we shoot at the bird, and the arrow goes up? Yeah. And then it misses and comes down? Yeah. We were the arrow. And so I come back to the question, when was the last time that you did something new and something scary and something out of your comfort zone or exciting? And there's a story in Matthew chapter 14, verses 24 to 30, or 25 to 32, about this kind of thing, about doing something out of your comfort zone, something new. Many of you have heard this story. It's about the disciples in a boat. It's about Peter. It's about Jesus walking on water. Let me read it to you very quickly. Matthew 14, verses 25 to 32. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it's I, don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me!" Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You have little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" Now this is a really incredible story in a number of different ways. Obviously the fact that Jesus was walking across the water and the disciples thought he was a ghost, that's really incredible. But perhaps more so than that for us is the fact that for the very first time in all of human history, a man got out of a boat and walked on water. Now you may say, well, no, it was that second time because Jesus did. And that's true, but see, Jesus cheated, he's God. But this was Peter. This was a man like you or I who gets out of the boat. The second thing that's really incredible about this story is that you'll notice that it ends in Jesus rebuking Peter. Now, he's like, "Why did you doubt? Why did you know, it's like if it had been me and I was Jesus, I would have said, "Peter, good job. That's incredible. You're the first person of all human history to get out and do this." But Jesus rebuked him. I'm going to come back to that later because there's a real significance to it that's for our lives. But for now, I'm going to go forward with this story. So I want to ask you this question, or I want to basically say this. No matter who you are, if you're alive and breathing, God has something more for your life. If you're sitting here this morning, it's because God has purposes and plans and impact and influence and things that are yet to be unfolded and carried out in your life. That's why he still has you living and breathing. Amen. And so there's always something more that God has for each of us. There's forward movement. There's new blessings in our lives or that we give to others' lives. New destiny, new significance. And for many of us, too, God is looking at us to make sure that we don't leave this earth without leaving behind a significant legacy. And so all those things are going on. Jeremiah 29:11 says this, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Now, as we think about moving forward, as we think about positive change, as we think about making a difference, as we think about our lives being better or different in some way, the question I next have is not just when was the last time you did something new, but when was the last time you needed to do something new or you wanted to do something new, but you didn't do something new for one simple reason, and that was fear. And I would suggest to you that for many of us, what keeps us from moving forward is not something outside of us, but it's something inside of us called fear. In fact, if you think about this story, Peter got out and walked on the water, but then became afraid. The other 11 disciples never even got out of the boat. They stayed inside because of fear. And so I want to talk about that. One of the biggest obstacles in our lives is fear. One of the things you'll find in the Bible is that all of the heroes of the faith, the heroes recorded in the Bible, are actually people who had very significant fears that they had to face and overcome to be able to go forward. If you think about David, David had his Goliath. If you think about Joshua, there were armies and there were fortified cities. If you think about Moses, there was Pharaoh and Pharaoh's armies. And then the list just goes on and on, is that anybody significant in the Bible is somebody who faced and overcame very big obstacles and fear. And so let's think about that for a bit. They all had that one thing in common. They overcame their fears and they acted. Okay, what are some of the times and places that we need to get out of the boat, that we need to move forward? Well, it could be just as simple as starting a new friendship, or a new relationship, or starting a new hobby, or something small or big. It could be as significant as a new job or a career. It could be higher education. It could be starting a business. It could be joining a new social group. at the church or outside of the church. Whatever it is, the thing that they all have in common is that most of us, if not all of us, are comfortable in certain places that we're used to, doing certain things that we have always done, and moving outside of those areas of comfort is difficult for everybody I've ever talked to. And so the question is, what are some of the new things that God may have for you? And then what kind of fear or what is it that's holding you back? And what are some of the first little steps to take towards moving into something new that God might have for you? One of the things that I have found as I continue living instead of dying is that every year I get older. And I find that every year that I get older that things don't work quite as well. I have more physical and mental limitations, although I live in denial of those things. And I find that I'm not all that I used to be, even though in the words of the song, I'm as good once as I, that kind of thing. But about 3 years ago, I was in Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya. I was on my way to Kakuma refugee camp on a small plane. And I was in Nairobi airport, and so we got on the plane, and myself and my team and other people, and we were on the plane for about an hour, and then they said to us, the plane is not functioning well, it's broken, get off, we'll find another plane. And so we got off, we sat down in the airport again, we waited about 2 hours, and then they put us on another plane. It was a smaller plane, but we were able to get on it and so on, and we sat down, and we waited this time about 45 minutes, and then they came and the stewardess announced, this plane is not working either. We need to all get off and we'll get another plane. Well, by this time, this may be hard to understand, but I'm starting to have some doubts about the trip and about the planes and about this particular rinky-dink little airline that we are on. So finally, they come and they say, we have another plane, but it's a lot smaller plane, and only the first third of the people who are here today will fit onto the plane, and the rest of you will have to come back for another flight tomorrow. And I'm like, all right, we're one of the first third. We get to go. I don't have to come back tomorrow. And so we go to get on the plane. And the plane, the only way I can describe it, and I've been on many, many, many small planes over the years in Africa and other places, but the only way I can describe it is that it appeared to be an elongated coffin. I mean, it was actually a commercial plane that had been converted to be a passenger plane, and it was like a hot dog, and it was just long and small, and so I climb up the stairs on the airplane, and when I get into it, I find that it's so short, I literally had to get down on my knees. And so I was in the middle of the plane, so I had to go on my knees like this to get to my seat. Now, I've never been claustrophobic. I've never had panic attacks. It's all been good. But I got to my seat. I sat in my seat, which was 6 inches off of the ground. And I found that the ceiling of the plane, with me sitting in my seat, was about 3 inches above me. And there was no air vents. There was absolutely nothing for air circulation or air vents in that airplane. I sat there for about a minute, and then I had the privilege and pleasure of experiencing my first panic attack. And I just sat there, and my body said to me, Rick, you are going to die. There is no air here, you're not going to be able to breathe. I started hyperventilating, and the next thing I knew, I had to crawl back off of that plane so that I could just handle emotionally trying to stay alive. And so I got off the plane, had one of my team come with me, and for me, that was the end of that flight. There was just no way that was going to happen. Now, I've been on various medications and stuff for travel and for some sickness I had, and that influenced it. But the wonderful thing about a panic attack, if you know anything about them, is it's a gift that keeps on giving. Because once you've had one, something kind of snaps inside, and then you start having them fairly regularly, and things that used to be simple are not so simple comfortable anymore. And I found that I started having claustrophobia. And for example, where you have a row of people here, and this woman's right here in the middle, I couldn't sit there in the middle anymore without feeling very, very uncomfortable. And different things like that happen. Well, that's a problem if you're a missionary traveling around the world on planes regularly, big and small. And so what I have found over time is that what used to be easy, now that I'm older and have had these experiences, is a lot harder. And as I've talked to other people who are aging, I found that for different reasons, all of us experience the same thing, and that is that things we used to do, we now become afraid to do. Ways that we used to do new things, we now don't want to do new things. And we start kind of shrinking in on ourselves and being much, much less active. And even we stop doing the things that we're capable of doing because of fear of getting hurt or fear of this or that or the other happening. And so what I find is that this is the way that life is. But in spite of all that, I want to say one thing very simple this morning, and that is get out of the boat. Get out of the boat. And face your fears, whatever they may be, and get out of the boat. And I want to give you 4 quick things to know about why to get out of the boat and why it's significant. So the first thing is this, is that when we get out of the boat, God will meet us. God will do miracles. God will help us to do the things that we need to do and we're trying to do that take us forward. Now, to make sure that we understand each other, let's talk about what do we mean? What is the boat? What does it mean to get out of the boat? Well, what's a boat? It's our comfort zones. It's the places we're used to and feel safe and secure. But it's also the places of mediocrity and being average. It's a place everyone else stays because it's easier. It's the non-challenging status quo, the non-frightening, the place where we don't need miracles to make it because we can depend on ourselves and our own strength. It's a place where we wait for other people to act first. It's a place where dreams go unfulfilled. And so when we get out of the boat, there's 4 things that happen. And the first thing is this: miracles happen. When Peter stepped out of the boat, the water became firm, hard ground. When David stepped out in faith against Goliath, he was able to kill him. When Moses stepped out, the Red Sea parted and they were able to go across it. When Joshua stepped out, fortified city fell down and they were able to take it. Miracles happen. I remember one church I was visiting and ministering in. There was a woman I talked with, and she just retired, but she wanted to get a job as a teacher's aide, and she wanted to continue giving back that way and being involved. But when she went to the local school and saw the qualifications, it was impossible. She didn't have the qualifications. And so for 2 years, she did nothing about it. And then she heard a message that was similar to this one. And she decided, well, what do I have to, what will it hurt to just go and apply and to go ask? So she went to the school, and despite her lack of qualifications according to what they were asking, she applied. She was immediately hired. She loved the job. They loved her. And she was able to give back and really enjoy it for a number of years after that because of one simple thing, and that is that she didn't give in to her fear. She got out of the boat. Okay, another example, my wife and I have a friend back in New York, and we were visiting on furlough one time from Africa, and we were spending time with her, as we often do with friends of ours. We were at lunch, and as we were talking with her, she was telling us about how at church some people had hurt her, and at work some people had hurt her, and she had finally just decided, I don't like people, people don't like me, I'm just going to kind of shrink in like a turtle. When I go to work, I'm going to immediately leave afterward. I'm not going to talk with people. When I go to church, I'm going to come late, leave early, so I don't have to interact with people. And that's the decision that she had made. And so she told us about that decision. And as we were looking at her and just talking to her, I really felt from the Holy Spirit that I had something I needed to say to her. I said, listen, Susan, I understand what you're saying, and I feel for the hurt that you've had. But I want you to know something, and that is that God has something else for you now. And what God is saying is that it's not time for you to retreat and withdraw and close in, But God is saying it's time for you to expand the pegs of your tent and to enlarge your area of influence. And an amazing thing happened when we told her that. She listened. You know, you can give a lot of advice out. How many of you give lots of advice? Nobody listens. You know, but she really received that as from the Lord. And 6 months later, she was engaged. A year later, she was married. And 2 years later, she had her first child. Now they have 3 or 4 children and are living happily ever after. And it's because she got out of the boat. She didn't continue giving into the fear of being hurt in relationships and things like that. But she decided, she made the decision to go forward. So miracles happen when we get out of the boat. The second thing that happens is that we step into new meaning and into destiny. See, because when we take steps out of the boat, it puts us in place for God to give us divine appointments, for us to meet key people and new people and resources. It's taking steps that move us into the place where dreams can turn into realities. In fact, the truth is that as long as Peter remained in the boat, the water was just water. Okay, he could look at it, he could pray for it, he could put his hand into it and feel it and put his hand down in it. As long as he stayed in the boat, it didn't matter what his faith was, it didn't matter what his hopes and prayers were, the water remained water. It is when you get out of the boat, it's when you act on your faith, it's when you act on what you think God is calling you to do, that the water takes on the substance of a nice path and concrete that you can walk on. And so when you step out of the boat, you step into new meaning and into destiny. One of the things that we have found over and over and over again in ministry is that as long as all we have is a vision and all we have is words, nothing happens. It's when we take concrete, actual steps that something happens. A good example of that is about 5 years ago, we were renting offices in downtown Harlingen for our ministry, which is Win Ministries. And our staff was growing, the office was shrinking, we were having to pay a lot for it, and the air conditioning couldn't support all the people and computers that we had in there for what we do. And so we believed that we needed a building. And we wanted a building. The only problem is we had no money for a building. And in fact, it was a miracle every month just to pay our staff. And yet, we felt God saying, it's time to get out of the boat. And so, without money, without credit to go to a bank or anything else, I just went to a friend who was a realtor. And I described to him what we needed, the size of the building, and so on and so forth. And then I said, oh yeah, and by the way, the other thing is, we need it to be donated because we don't have any money. Now, how would you like to be a realtor given that to do? You know, talk about a waste of time. But I will make a long story short. For the last 2 years now, we have been in our own building. It's over 5,000 square feet in downtown Harlingen, completely renovated, and we don't owe a penny on it because we stepped out in faith, and God did miracles when we stepped out in faith. And so again, when we step out in faith, we find new meaning and we enter into our destiny. You know, you can't be hired for a job that you never applied for, and you can't move forward sitting on your butt. You know, so third thing that happens when we get out of the boat, and this is very, very significant, is that it helps to break off spirits and patterns of fear. It helps to break off spirits and patterns of fear. Now let me go back to Jesus and Peter and why Jesus rebuked Peter. See, at the time that he tried to walk on water and then became afraid, Peter had no idea what his future held. He didn't know he was to be the chief among the apostles, doing the work of evangelism with the Gentiles and seeing countless thousands come to faith in Jesus Christ. He didn't know that he would pray for people and even see the dead come to life. He didn't know that he'd be walking along and there'd be such a power and anointing in his life that according to the Bible, people would bring and put people in his path so his shadow could fall on them because there were healings that happened when his shadow fell on them. Peter didn't know those things about himself. And what Peter was doing when he gave into fear was there was a very real possibility of him developing a pattern of fear. And that is why Jesus rebuked him. He didn't want him to go that road or go that direction. How many of you know the story of how King Saul went and defeated Goliath? Does anybody know that story? You don't know that story. Do you know why you don't know that story? Because if you read the background of King Saul in the Bible, you'll find that he had a spirit of fear. When Samuel came to him and told him, "You're to be king," Saul's reply was, "Who am I? I'm nobody, I'm nothing, my family is nothing." When Samuel came to anoint him as king in front of his whole family, they couldn't find him because he was hiding. The Bible says he was hiding in the baggage. In other words, he gave in over and over again to fear, and when it came time to face Goliath or the giants, he couldn't do it because there was already an established pattern. Whereas what you find in David's life is when he gets ready, when he's faced with Goliath, and King Saul tries to give him the same fear he has. King Saul says, "Hey, you're a little boy, this is a giant, he's been fighting all of his life, you're nothing and nobody." David says, "No, wait a minute." He says, "I fought the lion. I fought the bear. I protected my sheep. I'm not afraid of a giant. I'm already used to fighting things that are more dangerous and bigger than I am." He had a pattern of overcoming fear and facing his fears. And so it's good to understand that when you step out of the boat, you break off patterns of fear, and you start developing patterns of faith and of being able to do things that you haven't done before. Then the last thing I want to say is about this, is the fourth thing that happens when you get out of the boat, is that if you sink, God will save you. If you sink, God will save you. Peter did start to sink, didn't he? I mean, there's times we get out of the boat, there's times we start something new, and it goes sideways, or it goes down, or it goes backwards, or it goes wrong. Those things happen, there's no question about it. But the cool thing about it is if you do it in the will of God, then when you call on him, he saves you. Getting out of the boat always risks failure, but God is a God of working all things together for good for those who love him. Did Peter start sinking? Yes, but when he cried out, he was rescued. I'll tell you a quick story. When we were first in Africa, our first 2 years, we were in the Congo, and there was a civil war our second year, towards the end of our second year. And the next thing we knew, there was fighting in the streets and fighting all around us. And the American embassy ordered us to leave along with all the other American citizens. And they said, get down to the downtown, go see any of the airlines, get yourself tickets, and get out of here. So I went downtown, and there was fighting in the streets around me as I went down there. I went to South African Airlines, and they said, "We're sorry, we sold all of our tickets. Everybody else wants out too." And then the guy, he's the owner, or the manager, the general manager, he looked at me and he said, "But you know what? A lot of people are making reservations, but they're not paying." He said, "If you'll come back before we close today with cash in hand, I'll sell you the tickets." Well, first of all, it was 11:30 a.m. in the morning. It was Saturday, and they closed at noon. Second of all, there was 6 of us that were in my family and in our group, and so the tickets were $10,000. Now, I said, "Well, what about charge cards?" "No, it's got to be cash." "How about checks?" "Nope, it's got to be cash." How many of you keep $10,000 cash? Did any of you do that? If you do, I'd like to talk with you after. So there's where we were. But remember, God is the God of the rescue. And it just so happened that 3 days earlier, I received an email that one of the churches in Michigan that supported us had gotten older and they closed down. The last thing that they did was they gave 3 years of support to each of their missionaries. And so guess what? We had $10,000 sitting in the bank in the United States because of that, which we never ever had other times. And so I went I got in a taxi. It was too dangerous to have my car. Went down the street, and there was an Asian businessman who I had met a couple times. And I went in and I explained what was going on. I said, I don't have a check with me, but I have the money in the bank in America, and I can get a check to you later on. But right now, what I need before the airline closes is $10,000 in cash. Now, how many of you, a person you've met twice, would you say, oh yeah, sure, no problem. I'll give you $10,000 in cash. No problem. Well, he didn't say anything. He just walked out of the room, out of his office. He came back 10 minutes later with a paper bag, handed me the paper bag. I opened the paper bag and looked in it. It was full of $100 bills. It was $10,000 in cash. And I was able to get down to the airline and get the tickets before they closed that day. See, God knows how to rescue His own and to do miracles on our behalf. And so I just want to say this. It's so simple. Get out of the boat. When you get out, miracles will happen. You'll step into new meaning and destiny. You'll break off patterns and spirits of fear. And if you sink, God will save you. Isaiah 35:4, say to those with fearful hearts, be strong and don't fear, for your God is coming to destroy your enemies, and He is coming to save you. I'll just close with this. One of our missionary friends in Tanzania had a sign on the wall in his office, and it said this. It said, learn the joy of being average. Learn the joy of being average. And I appreciate the sentiment, don't be a perfectionist and so on. But all I want to say about learn the joy of being average is, no! Absolutely not! Don't learn that joy. Learn the joy of stepping out in faith with God to accomplish significant things in this life. Amen? Amen? I had another friend, I was talking to him on the phone, and he's got a big ministry that's significant, and we were talking about the challenge that we're having financially. It was in the middle of the recession. And I said to him, brother, I said, sometimes you just have to get out of the boat. He said, Brick, he said, I got out of the boat so long ago, I don't have any idea where the boat is anymore. That's the way that I want to live, with faith in God and overcoming fear and getting out of the boat and leaving a legacy behind because I do the things God created for me to do. So choose the blessings that are outside of the boat. I'd like to just ask everybody to stand right now. And as we have